I didn't expect all of this to end like this, but here we go. This story happened just a few hours ago and it deeply marked me. I am just a broke young woman who works extra shifts where I work to pay the bills and support myself, but with my freedom I had also lost my sense. And I hadn't realized that yet. It was just an ordinary Thursday afternoon. I was coming back home earlier that day, around 6 p.m. I was already arriving home, finally a day without extra work or stress, but my new neighbor, Karen, was standing in front of her house. Karen was a young woman in her 20s and successful. Well, I suppose she is successful, since she lives in a 3-story house. It was one of the few mansions in that simple place. "Hey, neighbor. Can we talk for a moment?" Karen approached me with a gentle smile, a pair of sunglasses covering her honey-colored eyes, and she was wearing an outfit in neutral tones. I hadn't noticed anything unusual up until then, since she had always seemed like a very friendly person ever since she moved there, although we hadn't known each other for very long. I usually trusted women very easily, so I simply responded with a light smile on my face, even though the exhaustion was still visible all over me. "Hello, neighbor." "Of course. What is it about?" She gave a slight smile, never showing her teeth. It was always that same soft and wide smile, too wide. "I bought this house with a new purpose." Karen paused and crossed her arms, still smiling in that same way, as if she only knew how to make that expression. Then she continued speaking. "I built a theme park and needed someone to test it." My only reaction was to give her a friendly smile, my mind already wandering through various princesses, superheroes, or famous series. I had always been fascinated by theme parks, so I decided that if she was really inviting me to visit this theme park and test it for her, I would definitely accept. It's not every day that you receive an invitation like that, especially from someone so rich who simply buys a house to build a park inside. I hadn't thought about the consequences, like, how could someone build a park inside a house? Was that really possible? Even if the house was big, it didn't seem large enough to hold a theme park. But I didn't think about that. I was so excited about the idea of visiting that place for free that I didn't think much about the consequences or anything like that. That means that I began, but Karen interrupted me. "You would be a great candidate to test it. You can be the first." Now that I stopped to think about it, her tone was actually strange. She didn't ask if I wanted to or if it was my choice. She just spoke and I accepted, as if I were in some kind of trance, or maybe I was just very naive. Having grown up in the countryside, I was used to knowing most people and trusting them, just like my family did blindly. That was definitely a flaw I needed to work on, but that woman seemed so trustworthy. Why shouldn't I trust her, after all? She was just my kind neighbor asking for a favor, and a very good one at that. I would be happy to be the first. Great, shall we? Again, it was a bit strange, since she didn't ask if I was available at that moment or suggest scheduling for another day. After all, it was only Thursday, but as I said, I was excited and exhausted from several days of extra work, so I just went along with everything in a submissive way. She began to walk away deliberately, and I followed a few steps behind her, analyzing the structure of the house. Looking more closely, it didn't seem to have only 3 floors, but I couldn't prove that from the outside. There weren't many windows, something I had never really noticed after all. I used to pass by early in the morning when it was still dark and return very late, and since I hadn't lived there long, it didn't make much sense for me to worry about analyzing someone else's house. I kept looking, trying not to imagine things that weren't there, especially since that neighbor seemed very kind. Why should I distrust her? Back in the countryside, people were like that too, and nothing bad had ever really happened to me. Nothing bad had ever happened to me. When we finally reached the front of her house, there was a normal entrance, just an ordinary home, so I simply went in with her. She guided me to the kitchen on the first floor. I found it strange that she had mentioned a theme park, but it was supposedly located at the back of the house. There were a few other rooms before reaching the supposed theme park. Well, it was a small kitchen compared to the size of the house, but I thought it might be some kind of large space. Maybe she used it to receive clients. It still hadn't fully sunk in that the place was completely strange, and that a theme park should be built in a more open area, not inside such a closed-off mansion like that. Well, I was in the kitchen when I turned around and realized she had locked the front door twice. The key turned, and she placed it inside a random vase near the entrance. Once inside, she seemed more relaxed, as if daylight affected her negatively. Her expression was pale. I just assumed she might have a vitamin deficiency or didn't like the sun, just like me. The strangest part was how she hid the key so discreetly, but I only caught a glimpse of it. I thought it was just for safety after all. Big cities can be dangerous, right? She invited me to sit at a small table in the center of the kitchen. Behind me, there was a small window with extremely resistant glass, but there wasn't actually any way to open it or get out through it. I didn't think much of it, and she quickly distracted me with casual conversation. "Working a lot, dear?" She kept smiling at me, as if that alone would make me trust her more. You tend to trust people who are always smiling more than those in movies, right? Quite a lot. I replied vaguely, since I didn't want to share too many details about my job. It was enough spending so much time there. I didn't need others knowing everything I did. "Do you have any family in the city?" "No, no one. They all live in the countryside, far from here." "I see. And do you talk to them often?" "In what way?" I tried to pause and think about whether I should answer such a personal question, but before I realized it, the words were already coming out of my mouth. "No, just a few messages. My mother doesn't really use her phone much, and my father even less." "That's a shame. And they never visit you?" At that moment, I started to feel nervous. Karen asked her questions so naturally that I couldn't help but answer. She was standing next to an electric kettle, heating water for tea. "I usually visit them," I replied casually, as if it were nothing. She nodded slowly, but it was clear she was analyzing everything I said. "Well, let us have some tea. Then I'll take you to see the theme park. You're going to love it." She turned to the sink and poured boiling water into the 2 cups, then added the peppermint tea bags. I didn't notice anything unusual at first, but a few things felt off. The taste of the tea didn't seem normal at all. I only took a small sip because it was still boiling hot. I had been drinking tea for many years, ever since I replaced coffee with it, so I knew very well what a plain peppermint tea should taste like, and that definitely was tea. It was too green and tasted like cinnamon. Wait, cinnamon? I had read somewhere that a cinnamon taste could mean something bad, like she could have put something in my tea and then used cinnamon to mask it. Or maybe she just liked tea with cinnamon and sugar, and with a lot of peppermint in it. I started to get suspicious, so I took another sip and felt a strange premonition. Then I just pretended I was drinking it, but there was nowhere to pour it out. Karen kept staring at me, her eyes slightly wide. So I let out a small sound. What happened? Are you Fee?